Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the All In Real Estate Podcast. I'm your host, David Morse, CEO of Keller Williams Arizona Realty, with my co-host sitting nice and cozy to me in the studio today.
Yeah, we are. Same side of the table.
That's right. Joe Quattrucci, the Director of Growth for the Chris and Cole Real Estate Network. What's up, buddy?
Doing well.
Doing well. Awesome. Well, today we have in studio with us a friend of mine, an amazing agent, investor, all the things, Steve Valentine. Steve, what's up, man?
What's up, guys? How are you?
We appreciate you being with us here today, Steve. Give our listeners kind of like a high-level overview of exactly what it is that you do.
I do the crazy in real estate, the things that most people don't think about.
Is that trademarked?
No, but it should be.
It definitely should be.
Anything that's outside the box.
I'm writing that down. We're trademarking that.
The
and
crazy.
Then we'll sell it to you.
Right. No, I run a real estate business, not necessarily a team. You know, everybody's really an extension of what my vision and what I do, and that's how we've set it up. And we do a lot of investment strategies. We do a lot of strategic placement for different people, depending on what they want to do and how they want to accomplish it. And I think there's a lot of different directions both buyers and sellers can go in this market and what we do. So I've just learned how to structure that with the right questions and get people to the right place.
Fantastic. Well, take us back a little bit. Take our listeners back. How did you get into real estate in the first place? Like, what led you to this point?
I was tired of rolling around on the hot concrete fixing cars and trucks when I was 20.
Okay,
so I went
grease monkey.
Yeah, I was. I love cars. I still love cars. I just don't like to work on them anymore because I can afford to pay somebody to do that now. But I love the business. That's what I did in high school. My parents were in real estate for years. Somebody, I always say it was by the grace of God because somebody stole all my tools. And as a mechanic, I had like my life savings wrapped up in my tools. I got a big fat insurance check when I was 20 and I was peace out. And my dad was one of those that he was not going to feed me with a silver spoon, and he laid down the law for me, like, you aren't going to get a commission check. You're not going to know what a commission tastes like for the first 2 years in this business. And he made me sit at a smaller desk than this table at the edge of his desk for the first 2 years, listening, learning, on appointments. That's what I did. That's how I learned this business, from somebody that survived 18% interest, from somebody that had been in the crazy markets and never changed jobs or careers. He always just figured it out.
Wow. How did you take that? Just like, you're going to sit here and you're going to basically be my gopher. It sounds
going to
like
be his bitch.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm hearing that. I'm thinking a lot of agents would be like, there's no way I would ever do that in a million years, but look at the success you've had. I mean, talk about what was the direct impact. I mean, is that something that obviously turned out working out for you in the long run?
Yeah, the direct impact was incredible, and I think that's where, Kyle, my producer, he's in the background. He was told the same stuff when he started with me, like, this is going to take years of you letting me teach you and learn, and you're trading time for education that you can't buy. And that was my dad's deal. Like, you're going to see what happens behind the scenes. And he didn't want me to experience a commission check because he's afraid that once you experience it, you're going to think this is so easy and you can go do it over and over again, and it's not that easy. Yeah, and he was right.
I was just saying to, I think it was like Instagram or Facebook the other day, that exact thing. Do not trick yourself. If you got a commission check in your first 30, 60 days, don't trick yourself into believing that's the business, because it's not. That's very interesting. And just thinking about the talent or lack of talent, in our industry right now, we could probably make arguments for either. Like, do you think there's many people out there right now in the real estate workforce that actually will take that message and actually apply it?
I think it's hard for people, because I think that people want to come into the business, they're coming out of another career, and they're all of a sudden trying to make it, and they might be the breadwinner in their family, so they have to make something happen. And I think that's a great hustle, but I think it's the wrong hustle, because if you can't come in with some sort of savings and some ability to really learn the business, you're constantly going to be going from one thing to the next to try to make something happen, and you're never truly going to understand it.
Interesting.
So bring us back. You're now in your young 20s. You've got this insurance payout. You're sitting there at your dad's little mini desk, so to speak. You're watching him for 2 years. Talk to us about the evolution then of your business after those first 2 years and how it progressed to what it is now.
Yeah, so the first 2 years was essentially working with buyers. My dad would send me out to open houses. I'd make calls. I'd do all the things. And then every time a buyer was ready to write a contract, I'd sit down with my dad and I'd listen to him read the contract over and over. And so it became a very redundant practice. But that's how I learned. And I learned the right questions and listening, because when you sit back and listen, you start to be a sponge and you start to see like, oh, okay, so that's how that works and that's how you respond to this. And you start to hear the objections and the way things are handled. So that's really what it was about. And I think at the time, sales prices were like $100,000 then. So I think I was getting like $250 to $500 a transaction when I'd close on something after driving somebody around and doing all those things. It was a time where Realtor.com was feeding leads and you were trying to convert and do different things. And so it just started to cultivate into that, and we were doing really well as a team. Fast forward to the 2005 timeframe. So now I'm in the business 6 years, and this is when the market started to go apeshit. And my dad had started focusing on investors. And now I was starting to do listing appointments, which was new for me. But I had to change what my dad was doing. Like, I swear to God, my dad read the spiral notebook so many times at listing presentations that he would fall asleep during them.
I want to be that good, actually. I'm not gonna lie.
I didn't even be awake to deliver this presentation.
Right. So, it was sheer chaos. When we started, I think in 2005, we were Realty Executives #2 internationally. We had closed, I think, 900 transactions that year. A lot of them primarily investors. We started building the property management company. And then, of course, we went outside the box. It was just the wrong box to go outside of. We ended up with a bunch of construction ancillary companies that tanked us in that market. We lost everything miserably. So there I am, 27, 2 toddlers, actually an infant and a toddler. My wife was in the business, and the business was unraveling increasingly. So there were some things that happened as a family that I had to man up, tell my dad, I'm sorry, but we can't be here anymore. I got to go take care of my family. But when we walked away with $1 million worth of personally guaranteed debt. We lost $1 million worth of cash and assets that we had invested in those businesses, and we had to start over.
Wow.
So that was.
What are you feeling at that moment?
Big time loser. There's still a letter that's in what I call my accordion file. There's a suicide note. That's how bad it was for me, because I had failed my family, failed my wife. We had lost everything, and I had no control over that. So failure was I wanted the easy way out. The good news is I didn't own any firearms at the time, so it wasn't an option.
You are sitting here today. That's good.
Yeah, I am sitting here today.
So what was the process that you had to work through to kind of dig yourself out of that hole, not only mentally, but then to actually get yourself back into action and start rebuilding?
So the rebuild was, I think the thing that prodded me the most was in December of that year was watching my wife walk out the door to go wait tables. I took care of the kids. My wife's waiting tables. I'm doing little sprinkler jobs, anything that we're hiding cars here and there, all the things that we were doing to try. We were putting signs in short sales that, we had no idea what we were doing, but it was creating buyer leads. So it was anything, possible to make that work. And so here's the cool thing. We put our heads down and we just went nose to the grindstone. You fast forward, what happened was I received an incredible opportunity to do foreclosures, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, through Realty Executives, and my broker at the time, Sandy. She was a great friend for many, many years, and we never filed bankruptcy. We went nose to grindstone through 2008, 2012, and we paid all the debt back, all $1 million. Got our taxes cleaned up, bought our house again, 2012. But it was just head down, do anything and everything we needed to. And at that time, it was 20 hours a day doing REOs. And
that was head down, nose to the grindstone for 4 years.
Yes.
It's not like this is a couple of weeks, couple of months. We're talking about 4 years of the rebuilding process.
Here's my favorite quote, and it goes back to this, and I'm going to botch it, but Eminem, 8 Mile, lose yourself.
I can help you here.
Right? he starts out, you got one opportunity. Are you going to let it slip, or are you going to capture it? So my thing was the REOs was my one opportunity, and I didn't care who I had to brown nose, what asset managers I had to send cookies to. I will be here all day. I will answer the phone. It doesn't matter. And that was going to be, I was going to be the best of the best in doing what I did. And that was how I built my reputation. What's cool is some of my Fannie Mae asset managers are now real estate agents that refer transactions to me here in Arizona now. Like the relationship piece, right? I was building and building and building, and that's what was going to get me out of the hole.
One thing I'm hearing, Steve, and I love vertical integration in business, but it sounds almost like you went a little too deep, right? During the run up.
It's too wide.
Right? Or, I'm sorry, too wide.
Too wide.
Thank you for saying what I meant to say. A little too wide there. And clawing your way back over those 4 years, you decided to go deep in that one thing.
Yep.
Like just focusing on that one thing. And I think there's definitely a principle there for business owners. Integration is fantastic, and going wide and bringing these ancillary things in is great if you scale appropriately, if you do it right. And I think sometimes, especially in a good market, we can get a little trigger happy with adding those things.
We can talk about do's and don'ts in good markets, and I think that's if you know, we did a podcast last week on Thinking OTB about the accordion file, and that's the file of when everything crumbled. So I often go back to look at the financials, the things we were trying to accomplish, what we were trying to uncover. And I look at it from the standpoint of what did I learn from this to do and not to do? So what am I seeing? What am I not seeing? And I think it was really important. Like right now, I think there's a lot of agents that are spending more money than they should. And I think people are getting into businesses that they think is going to be the next thing. And I can tell you my failure back then was not staying deep into real estate and figuring it out, because maybe I would have seen the market turn. I would have seen the investor opportunity to collect more money, and I missed all of it because we were so busy trying to get out of debt. So I think right now I'm very focused on what am I seeing in this market and not going too wide. But I think Gary Keller says it best, right? It's not the amount of ideas that you're presented to, it's the amount of ideas you say no to. But I think I remember hearing him speak about his folder system. Like, this can be a really good idea when the right person comes along.
Yeah. Yep.
And that's many of the ways that I look at things right now. When I looked at, I failed a couple of years ago trying to do the podcast and it's always something I wanted to do because I like to talk. And it was still a dream, so I kind of put it aside, but until the right people, when Kyle came along and then Bernie became the co-host when I asked her, it became the right time to do it.
So tell us about the podcast. You've mentioned Thinking OTB, Thinking Outside the Box. Tell us a little bit about what is the general premise of that podcast and how is that integrated into your real estate business?
So everything that I do now, I think there's an outside the box solution, right? So I think there's so many ways to capitalize, and actually this is what I try to tell people. The bigger the solution you provide, the more money you're going to make. Sometimes there's complete chaos in what I do, and the stories that I can tell you of what we've solved for certain people. I'll give you a great example of thinking outside the box right now. So we've raised a bunch of money through private investors to invest in real estate. They get a great return. We get to solve problems. I get to build wealth, all these different things. But it was out of, how do I solve something for them where it's taking away risk, and how do I get the ability to do certain things? So we all know this market is crazy. We had a VA buyer recently that is just getting their butts kicked in this market. They're good friends of ours. He's a military veteran, served a couple of tours in Iraq. Great kids, great family, and it just hurt to watch what was happening 8 offers later. So I went to Eric. I'm like, hey, the next house, like, just go buy it. Go buy it, pay cash for it. We'll do it out of our investor funds, and we will sell it back to them. We'll figure it out. Just say yes and figure it out later. That's kind of my theory. So that's what we did. So we bought him a house. We negotiated through it, and I saw them yesterday, and she is standing there bawling her eyes out, not knowing what to say, other than there's no way we would have been able to do this if you didn't have this weird, chaotic brain of yours that works this way.
Well, I love that whole concept and this idea of thinking outside the box, because obviously as real estate consultants, that's what we do. We help people solve their problems as they pertain to real estate and finances. And identifying problems and then providing solutions to those problems is where we get, that's why we earn a commission check.
Right.
And so the solution, to your point, Steve, is not always to just list on the MLS or to not always make an offer on that MLS listing, in this case the VA loan. So you provided a really creative solution to help this particular client, which then evolved into now another arm of your business altogether, if I'm hearing you correctly.
So it's just one of those things that you go outside the box. But I think the podcast, when we started it, was how do I get agents and the consumer to understand that there's different pieces to this business and not everything equates to putting a sign in the yard and putting a buyer in the car.
Right.
There's a different way to go about this, and it's also a way to, when you talk about thinking outside the box, it's also my way. We were talking a little bit off air about connecting with more agents, right? So there's a lot of agents that don't know how to get there yet. My dad did it. I started to learn a little bit more of it, and as time has gone on, the solutions have gotten weirder. But I think some people are like, you're like the Rain Man of real estate. I just see things differently in how we get from point A to point B, and there's different loopholes there. But anybody that's been in this business for 10 or 15 years, they've never seen the creative side of real estate. They don't understand there's different ways to accomplish things.
In your estimation, why is that? Is that a failure on the way that we instruct new real estate agents? Is it?
David, have you taken real estate school classes?
I set you up.
Okay.
I set you up.
Yeah. What do I think it is? I think it is that we come into the business, we listen to classes, we listen to podcasts, and everything is so transactionally driven on GCI and how many transactions do you want to do. And they miss the true opportunity of why they really got their license to begin with. And actually, I don't think most people truly understand why they're getting their license and the benefits of having your license. And so it's not widely taught. I mean, think about it. How many, I'm going to put you guys in the hot seat. How many times in this big KW office has there been trainings on investing in real estate and understanding cap rates and understanding what to do, how to do it, right?
Well, I'm going to take credit for that because just last week.
But to your point, Steve, some and even still not enough.
But not enough, right.
You're absolutely right.
Exactly.
And whether you're thinking about becoming an investor personally or not is kind of beside the point. As it pertains to this conversation, let's having investing classes so that we can better equip our clients with the information, tools, and resources that they need.
Right.
We have a fiduciary responsibility, in my opinion, to understand how to analyze a property from the investment perspective so that we can consult with our investor clients. And when I say investor clients, you don't have to be a self-designated full-time investor to invest in real estate.
No.
How many people have equity sitting in their home right now that they could be leveraging to go buy their first rental property,
right,
or their third rental property or vacation home? And so just, again, the awareness and the knowledge of what resources we have available to us
right,
to present with our clients.
See, I think the evolution of an agent should be going from, okay, you spend some time in learning the traditional side so that you understand the mechanics of the business, you understand the mechanics of the contract, and then starting to educate yourself in the investment side so that you're right, so you can have conversations with clients, right? My clients always have the option to keep the house. I've talked myself out of more sales than most people have sold houses because I want people to build wealth and I want them to understand it. And my promise is always this: I will never sell you or take you down the road of something I haven't done. Okay, I own a very large portfolio. We own commercial properties. We own VRBOs both up north and in Scottsdale. So I've done all of these things. When people ask me about multifamily, like, I really don't know anything about it because I haven't done it. So I can't really give you the best guidance on it. I know how the mechanics work. I know what I do and don't like about it. But, the opportunity to understand, I mean, most agents, they couldn't tell you what a cap rate is. They couldn't tell you what's going on in the rental market right now, which oddly enough, the rental market is worse than the sale market as far as finding rentals, the rental increases. Do you guys know we've increased like 30 to 35% in rental rates right now?
It's huge.
It's insane.
I mean, the portfolio, the ability, like if you had decided to rent your house out last year because that was an option, you would have gained $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 in equity, enough to put your kid through college by keeping your house 1 year. Just 1 year.
Well, and in hearing you talk about this, you're a very abundant thinker, right? In this whole thing, to be willing to turn down a listing. I mean, it just shows that there's a genuineness in finding what's in the best interest for your clients. So, what are the biggest areas of opportunity for agents right now to think outside the box? Like, I want to think outside the box more, Steve. What do I go do?
You start by listening to my podcast. I think you need to know what the options are. Okay, so let's talk about that, and that's where, you remember all the bitching that was going on about Zillow and OfferPad and Open Door, and they're going to ruin the market. They can't do what I do in the relationship side because they're the Titanic and I'm a speedboat, which means I can run circles around you and give you different options that are going to make better sense. And I can show you how it works. I think that it's understanding what is like, hey, have you thought about keeping your house as a rental? Well, what does that look like? You need to know how rentals work. You need to connect with a good property manager. You need to know, like, what is the rental market doing? And is it an option? Can they qualify to keep it? Can they pull equity out? See, when I meet with somebody, there's a whole strategy that goes to it because there's refinances, there's equity lines, there's cash flow, there's so many things to it. And then you find out, well, maybe it's not a good option for you guys and we should sell the house. There's also the option of, we're doing a lot of buy and stay right now. So you can cash out of your equity and you can stay here until we find the house. And I will buy it personally and let you lease it back until we find the next house. That's people's biggest, the hardest contention right now is if I sell my house, I'm getting a good price, but where the hell am I going to go?
Right.
Yep, we just talked about this yesterday in our company meeting. Exactly. So there's that. There's acquiring the knowledge and understanding what things are available to people. I just lost my train of thought. That doesn't happen often.
No, it doesn't. You're usually pretty good. Let me pick up on it. So where do we, let's talk, you mentioned your podcast, obviously that's a resource. So other than, talking to people around us or seeking out the knowledge on YouTube, where do I go to start figuring out what are the different options? How do I know based on today's market what I should be looking at, what type of consumer, buyer and seller I should be focused on targeting? You mentioned REOs, obviously, back earlier in your career. I guess what I'm asking is, in the market today, what am I looking to expand my knowledge around because it's an opportunity in this market? I mean, you mentioned the one example.
I think you're going to expand your knowledge by asking the right questions and seeing what people's true motivation is. When it comes down to it, so many of us, I learned some things not to do with my dad, like watching listing presentations. Nobody really gives a crap how many houses I've sold last year or my career, those types of things. They want to know how I can get them from point A to point B, right? So it's by asking the right questions we'll expand that knowledge and, okay, well, look at know what the online companies are doing. What are they offering? Is there a way for me to offer that to a client? Do I have an investor resource if I come across? The next thing, right, that's where most agents aren't prepared. If you walk into a listing appointment tomorrow and it's trashed, your first thought is, God, I don't know if I can help these people. What am I going to do? Where do I go with it? Where are your resources to solve that problem? Who is it? Well, you don't want it to be a wholesaler because you have no idea what they're going to do with it. Is there somebody inside your office that's an investor? Again, it goes back to connecting the dots, right? Who's your resources? I teach agents all the time, hey, I want to be a resource when you come across this. If you have something that falls through at the 11th hour, if you have something that's trashed, if you see an opportunity, I want to be a resource for you to bring into the fold, and we work together and create the win-win situation, which ultimately they become the hero. And that's what I want to provide, and that's how we work together in the industry as well.
Yeah, and you mentioned earlier, the one thing that all these online websites and discount brokerages cannot provide is that relationship. And we talk about that all the time. Yes, they have a service, and yes, they have something of value to offer consumers, and yet they can never truly take away our business if we don't let them, because they cannot provide that individual, customized, one-on-one support, guidance, and consultation. Right. And that's exactly what you're touching on.
Right.
The analogy of the Titanic and the speedboat was a really good one. And so if you didn't pick up on that, definitely, rewind a few minutes and hear that one more time, because that's a big point. You just mentioned, agents working together. Mm-hmm. Talk to me a little bit more about that, because obviously I see it every day. We're in a really territorial business, especially in some sectors. So talk to me about collaboration, why you see that as an important, aspect of our business moving forward, especially.
Look, I believe that there's enough there's enough business to go around and there's enough problems to solve for everybody to create the win-win situation. And I think that, like you just talked about relationships, right? When I got into the business, it was even worse on the territorial. Like, you weren't doing podcasts to share anything with the real estate industry. It was very like, I always remind me of like being in second grade and your folders are up on your desk. You're like, don't be looking over here. Like, this is proprietary information.
All of us have different copiers and everything like that, so we're not stealing listing presentations.
Here's what it comes down to is I think that you can have more connections and more relationships with the agents, which can ultimately only help the industry look better if people aren't hoarding things, trying to like, well, I don't want to cross the agency line, right? The brokerage line. And I'm like, I want to be friends with all of these people as long as it's on a professional level. And if there's something that I can do for you that's going to help your client win, and it's a solution that you can't do yourself yet, but if you see how I operate this and I help you, hopefully you will see what you have potential to do and start connecting the dots. And that's really where I started with connecting the dots, understanding like cap rates. Hey, this investor wants to make an 8% cash on cash return, but he can't do that in a rental property. So, hey, will you loan me money?
Right.
Because I can give you your 8% return and you have no risk, but I'm going to take the risk by buying the house. And that's literally how we started connecting the dots with investors. And that's probably one of the biggest questions the agents are asking me, like, well, where do you get money to buy houses? From my clients?
It's always the first question. Well, I can't afford to invest. I don't need to learn investing. I can't afford it. How do I get started? I don't know where to even begin without the money.
Right. Yeah. It's not the money, it's the mindset. Yeah. If you don't start with mindset that you're looking at, so agents, right? This goes back to where it all unfolds when I tell people. They miss the fact that their real estate license is not the opportunity to make $100,000 a year. It's the opportunity to create $100,000 a year in potential mailbox money in 20 years from now, because they're so busy focusing on commission and income that they're not focusing on, hey, how long you been in the business, David?
3 years.
3 years. Okay. I know you've already started some of the path. Okay. If you bought one house for the next 20 years, one opportunity that you saw that solved the problem for the consumer, and it helped you build wealth, and it's a win-win situation between you and the consumer, and 20 years down the road, you've got 20 properties that are now paid off, that are free and clear, producing $20,000 a month income. That's all you had to do was give up $6,000 in commission once a year to create that.
Exactly.
That's how simple it is. Yep. And that's reality. But here's the reality for the agent. They feel that there's some sort of line they're crossing with the consumer. But if you're doing it in the right way, saying like, hey, here are all the things you can do. Which option would you like? I can make this super simple for you here. And does that create a win-win for both of us? Okay. Just because somebody sells me a house at 70 cents on the dollar does not mean that, I'm violating anything from DRE or anything else. It was the best solution for them. Could they have gotten more money by putting it on the market, by doing repairs? Yes, but they didn't want to. Right. But we're afraid to give them those options because you're like, I'll remember the first Zillow lead I went to, and I'm like, I'm walking out the door and I swallowed hard. I'm like, house is probably worth $150 if he did some work for it. And I'm walking out, I'm like, I'll give you $100,000 for it. I'm like, I could lose this listing. He says, give me 102. And I'm like, oh, where am I going to get money? I don't know, but I'll figure it out.
Well, and if you still need proof for that, if you're listening to this and you need proof, I mean, it goes back to what you're saying, uncovering motivation. For some people, I mean, we brought up Zillow and Open Door and all the convenience is the motivation, right? Mm-hmm. That alone should tell you that there is space for all of these different options, right?
Relationship also creates the ability for some people, believe it or not, may just want to bless you. I had an investor recently sell me something at 65 cents on the dollar and says, you know what? I know I could get more by putting this on the market and I could have you help me fix it up and all this other stuff, but I really want to bless you and your family for what you've done for us for the last 10 years.
No kidding.
Wow.
It goes back to relationships. So if you look fast forward to where we're going, I think everything's about connecting the dots and the relationships you have. I don't know that the lead gen machine is going to produce what it used to without the ability to establish a relationship and the ability to connect the dots in the back end. Human
connection. I mean, I hear that word and the craving for connection more and more, especially coming out of what we've been stuck in for the last 12, 15 months, whatever it's been. This ability, the winners are going to be this year, I believe, those agents, those professionals who are able to create connection and community in new and profound ways. And that's human capital.
Yeah.
That's human capital.
Yeah, I call it relationship capital.
There we go.
Right? That's how I've raised money to invest in real estate. That's what's gotten me to where I'm at. It's because of the relationship capital.
Definitely. So this has been a great conversation to this point. I can't even believe that we're already starting to run out of time. We're gonna have you back. Maybe we'll just do a Thinking OTB and all-in series.
Ooh, I like it.
What do we do?
Yeah.
All right. But I want to transition us into the last segment of our show, which is 3, 2, 1 action. It's the same 3 questions we ask every single guest. You ready to be on the hot seat?
Sure.
You thought you were on the hot seat up to this point. Not even close. Just wait. Question number 1.
All right, Steve. Who is the one person who has had the most impactful who's had the most substantial?
What's with us today in our words?
The most substantial impact on your business. Who's the one person with the most substantial impact on your business as a whole, and why?
It'd be my dad. My dad passed away 5 years ago, but it wasn't just the impact that most people would think, like, oh, he taught me everything I knew. He taught me a lot of really awesome stuff at the beginning, and he taught me a lot of shit not to do at the end. And I'll give you the one thing that really resonated me when he had gotten brain cancer was looking around at some of his investors. And here's the one thing that I'm very clear with people that want to invest with me. I will work with you and we will build wealth together, but I will not work for you. Because investors seem to think that real estate agents don't have any value and they can dictate what you're going to get paid and those types of things. My dad let investors dictate how his life was going to turn out, and I won't do it.
What an important principle.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, it just goes kind of into this whole conversation's really been about making that switch in your mindset. The way that you think about investment properties, the way that you think about the service we provide to our clients, and the way that you think about that relationship and that partnership between investors and real estate agents.
And if you don't value yourself, nobody else is going to value you.
Exactly.
Plain and simple.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Maybe outside of mom.
All right. All right, David,
Question number 2. What is the most influential book on your life or business?
Dude, there's so many of them. Most
of our guests cheat on this question. We're not going to let you cheat, Steve.
Okay, so one book. It's probably one that I read recently that got me to, and I know you guys have mentioned in the past, but the 12-week year. Yeah. Just about cutting down goals and trimming it down into things that you can truly accomplish and only being focused on what you're really going to work on. And I think that really has made an impact. It's something, in our team, we all live by, like, what do we do in the next 12 weeks and really taking that time at the end of the 12 weeks to celebrate and plan out for the next 12 and realizing that the year doesn't have to revolve on 4 quarters.
Yeah. Yeah. We've adjusted our entire brokerage this year to operate on this 12-week year idea. So, that's definitely a big one. Let me ask you about that real quick. Didn't you guys record an episode about 90-day goals or 90-day sprint? Okay.
Yep.
All right. Yeah. So definitely check that out on Steve's podcast.
All right, Steve, third and final question for you. This is, of course, the All-In podcast where we encourage and challenge our listeners to go take action after hearing this episode. So what advice are you going to give to any real estate agent listening to this podcast saying, I want to do better, I want to provide a better service? What can they go do right now to start moving in that direction with their consumers?
Okay, I'm going to change that question up on you. As much as I love for it to be for the consumers, I want to tell you the things that you need to do for yourself. We got into the business to help consumers, but we rarely look at ourselves in the mirror as our own client. And I think that we need to know that your buyer's list includes you. So that when an opportunity comes around, here's where most agents do it, right? They see a property that needs work and they're instantly trying to find an investor so they can double dip it, rather than finding the partner or the money to create the wealth. So your opportunity, you see opportunities every day in this business, and how you look at them should change your mind. And so, it's looking at, how do I capture the opportunities rather than letting them slip, or rather than collecting a paycheck? So I would encourage, any agent to start building their investment plan. We all talk about our goals and our income. Who's talking about our long term? Yeah. My goal is the big crazy goal. I told you I'm all crazy, right? 50-50 at 50, which means 50 single family homes at the age 50 producing $50,000 a month in passive income that are free and clear. I got 8 years left on that plan, and I'm getting close. But this is how fast that happened. 5 years. Bought my first rental property 5 years ago.
Wow.
Because that's when my mindset changed after my dad died.
Oh.
Because here's the thing. Dad was 40 years in the business, died owning nothing, but built multi-million-dollar portfolios for people and died owning nothing. So I refused to look at this business and not figure out what some of the opportunities are for my family that is also providing a solution to the customer.
You really do think outside the box, and I love I love the 50-50 at 50. I mean, that's a quantifiable goal. It's measurable, right?
Right.
And it just totally makes sense. And I'm super passionate about this topic because I completely agree with everything you're saying. And I've told David a million times, I got into real estate specifically to look at the long-term investment strategy, and everything I'm doing in the meantime is really building toward that.
Right.
And so I love the idea of what you're doing, of sharing that knowledge, that vision, and the resources to enable more people, to go in and to take action and to build that wealth and stability for themselves and for their families.
Right.
Yeah, and I think that's why there's so much alignment, why we get along so well, Steve, is because we do share that vision. It's like, how are we teaching our agents not just about their commission revenue? Like that is probably the least important thing in your life.
Yeah, it's like, where do you set your net worth goal?
Exactly. Tracking those things. And it's just, it's not how the traditional, brokerage and an agent training model thinks.
Right.
When you were sharing that, it made me think of another Gary Keller quote where he does say people overestimate where they can be in a year, but they underestimate where they can be in 5 years.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
And in 5 years, chunked down into these like 12-week years, it's amazing where you can end up. Hey, I want to thank you for being a guest on our show today.
Absolutely.
And for bringing value to our audience. If our audience wants to find more about you, more of your content, where's the best place for them to go?
Instagram at Steve D. Valentine is probably the best place. Same place on Facebook. Pretty much the same content in both. And then the podcast is Thinking OTB.
Awesome.
Anywhere a podcast is produced.
Exactly. Well, definitely go check out Steve's podcast, Thinking OTB. Hit him up on Instagram. And I want to challenge you guys. Start thinking outside the box in your business. Think for the long term. Play the infinite game, not just this next, where's my next commission coming from? Guys, this has been a great episode. Thanks so much, guys, for being with us today. And as always, go out and play all in.
Hey guys, thanks for listening to this episode of the All In Podcast. We want to invite you to find all of today's resources from our show page at aipodcast.co. We also ask that you take just 1 minute to leave us a review on iTunes or wherever you get your podcast. This is how we grow and how we're able to bring you the best content each and every week. Now go play all in.